Okay, let's go to the fact that JD Vance is the nominee. I wrote last night, I immediately got on the line to the Washington Post and said, let me write for you why this is a great choice. And I did. So my column is over at thewashingtonpost.com, and I put it out on X a couple of times. And it begins, I got to find it for you because it begins with the key phrase about why JD Vance is an extraordinary choice. I had JD on this program, Senator Vance on this program, future Vice President Vance on this program in August of 2016 when his first book came out, his only book, Hillbilly Elegy, before he was famous. It may not have been his first interview, but it was clearly among his first interviews. And I had loved the book, and unlike most book interviewers, I had read every word of it. And I just thought he was a fabulous guy then. I still think he's a fabulous guy now. And what I think is particularly important for President Trump's campaign, my post column reads this. When he chose his 2024 running mate, Donald Trump was surely thinking about veterans. The veteran vote matters enormously in the 5 key swing states. There are nearly 800,000 veterans in Pennsylvania, 500,000 plus in Michigan, 283,000 in Wisconsin. Arizona has more than 450,000, and Nevada more than 200,000. Add to that tally large numbers of active duty military in Virginia, North Carolina, and Georgia. Exit polls show that Trump won 61% of the veteran vote in 2016 and only 54% in 2020. That 7-point drop mattered in states where he lost by the narrowest of margins. 81,000 votes in the Keystone State, that's Pennsylvania. 34,000 votes in the Silver State, that's Nevada. 155,000 votes in Michigan, and only 21,000 in Wisconsin. If Trump pushes his margin among veterans back up by 7%, he wins Wisconsin and Michigan easily and closes the gap significantly in Pennsylvania as well as other swing states. Veterans are a seldom studied subgroup of politics, and J.D. Vance, when Trump announced his vice presidential pick, speaks to them. As an enlisted man, a former Marine Corps grunt who spelled out at length the role of the Corps in making the man in his best-selling memoir, Hillbilly Elegy. I interviewed back in 2016 Vance, and I published a lot of his answers about the Marine Corps. I put them over at the Washington Post. Go and read them. I think it's going to resonate with everyone who's put on the uniform that we're going to have a veteran back inside the White House for the first time. Well, I'm not really sure when we had George W. Bush was a veteran. And before that, I don't know. But George W. Bush did not deploy to a war zone. He flew. It's a dangerous business. He was a fighter pilot. But I don't believe he deployed to a war zone. Now, I've already had blowback from people saying, oh, J.D. didn't hear a shot fired, that he was a war correspondent for the Marine Corps. He was in Iraq in 2005 when things were going to hell. And you don't have to get shot at to be under dire threat every day that you're in Iraq prior to the success of the surge in 2007 and 2008. J.D. Vance served in the uniform, and he credits the Marine Corps with turning his life around. Everyone knows his story or should know his story. Grew up in a broken home, raised primarily by his extraordinary grandmother, Mama, and his grandfather, Papa, because his mother was an addict, had 6 different men in his life. J.D. grew up in trouble, did not really know the social graces, did not have a lot of what he calls social capital. So the Marine Corps made the man. He couldn't even fill out the Ohio State University application form. And let me assure you, it's not that hard. But he couldn't figure it out. He and his grandma couldn't figure it out. So instead of going to college, he went into the Marines. I believe he went down to Camp Lejeune and Parris Island first. Went through basic training at Parris Island, did his 4 years, got out, went through the Ohio State University in 2 years, applied to it, and accepted at Yale Law School. I love the story he tells in Hillbilly Elegy of going to the recruitment dinner with Gibson Dunn. I told him in that interview, and I've interviewed him a score of times, that it reminded me of my interview with Gibson Dunn and Crutcher in 1982 in Ann Arbor. David Krinsky was the lawyer in charge of that, but there were a bunch of people who came out. And they put 4 or 5 lawyers, and they culled down the list of people they want to make maybe a summer offer to 6 or 7. And it's usually a big, elaborate deal. And J.D. got in there, and he didn't have any idea how to eat. I mean, he just didn't have table manners. He didn't know anything. They didn't teach him that in the Marine Corps. They taught him not to buy a car at 21% interest. But he's sitting there, what do I do? And he excused himself. He spit out sparkling water. He'd never tasted it before. And thought, what is that? Excused himself, made a call to his advisor, said, what do I do? There are 25 pieces of cutlery here. He said, listen to me. Start from the outside, work your way in. The stuff at the top is for dessert. He got through the meal. He got the offer. He didn't ever work for Gibson Dunn, but he did go to big law. Then he went to big tech in Silicon Valley. Met an extraordinary woman. Just an extraordinary woman. Read about her. The daughter of Indian immigrants. They've got 3 wonderful children. He's a practicing Catholic. He's a wonderful, tremendous vote getter in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. That's why I think he's on this ticket. He's got real appeal for the men and women who work with their hands, who have served the military and love this country. JD Vance can be a great vice president.